Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group. This is the bi-weekly sync. It is February 27th, 1 day to go still in this month, isn't it? Or is it actually 29th? A special 29th day. Actually, isn't it? Isn't Saturday actually 29th? I can't remember. Anyway, it is 2020 and it is the typical, yes, 2 days, thank you. It is the typical bi-weekly call where we talk about everything around client-side development in the context of SharePoint, but also actually nowadays more on the context of Teams and also in Office add-ins. So as part of all of this transition, I'm going to ramble slightly here at the start. We are gradually moving into the reposition the SharePoint PnP back to its original name, which was actually Office 365 Developer Patterns and Practices, but now the Office 365 is getting renamed. So we're kind of gradually moving into the model where our community will be renamed, community activities will be renamed as a Microsoft 365 Patterns and Practices, and not just dev, but also the other stuff as well. So just letting you know there as we're moving along on this journey. Now, as also in this case, SharePoint Framework is potentially getting renamed sooner or later. Potentially, we'll see what's going to happen there. So we're looking into all of these name changes happening because SharePoint Framework is not just about SharePoint anymore, and it makes sense potentially to rename that. Anyway, let's go move forward on today's call. And if there's any immediate critical questions, let me know on the chat. I can see that on one of the screens. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about quick updates on the SharePoint Framework. Nothing too dramatical actually there. So not too much updates right now. We're kind of setting up our scene for the spring conference season, which is built on SharePoint conference coming up in May. And those are the kind of our big announcement days next time. Now, we'll do a quick update on our open source projects. So PMPJs, Office 365 CLI, SPFx Reusable Components, and PnP Generator. It might be that in future, we'll cover also Yeoman Generator for Teams here, just to setting you the scene on the future adjustments. Also, the demos, we originally were intended to have 3 demos today. Unfortunately, Martin Hatch had to cancel due to an unexpected situation from his timing perspective. So we'll have 2 demos, and after that, potentially time for Q&A. But Markus and Nanddeep, in this case, doesn't have to rush. They can actually concentrate on a demo, and hopefully we'll still have time for Q&A in the end. We'll see how the day goes. It really depends on how many questions you're also adding on the chat. Now, a few recap slides for everybody, just making sure that everybody is aware of these things, because there is new persons joining on this community call as well. That's already noted on the chat. So first of all, there are opportunities for you to participate in our community and in these community calls as well. So you can definitely request a demo spot in this call. We actually value tremendously our community to do this demo. So it wouldn't have to be always a Microsoft or an MVP to do that. Rather, you as a person who writes something for the real world customers or real world end users, it would be awesome to see those things and those learnings as well. So that could be anything around SharePoint Framework, web part application customizer, Microsoft Teams extensibility related on SharePoint Framework or client-side development and so on. And if you're interested, just ping us and we'll set you a thing. Also, you can demo something related on PMPJs, Office 365 CLI, or SPFx Reusable Controls and Yeoman Generator. More than welcome those as well, because we always learn so much from these community demos. Contributing GitHub is also more than welcome. So we do have multiple different GitHub activities. We are doing, again, small adjustments on the GitHub repos and their movement. We are trying to kind of centralize all of our open source repositories and projects to the PnP GitHub organization, just to make sure that people are kind of consider what is an open source and community driven versus what is actually Microsoft led and Microsoft documentation and so on. So you will see pretty soon some of the open source projects getting moved from Office Dev or from the SharePoint organization to the PnP organization in GitHub. So we're just kind of centralizing things, so making it hopefully easier for you to find things. But regardless of those movements, and by the way, the movements are completely seamless. They do not impact you, even though you would have a local copy in your computer. GitHub is smart enough to actually deal with the movements as well. We do welcome pull requests. We do welcome issues. If you find something, we're trying to also do plenty of cleanup on the issue lists. We do know that some of the issue lists are getting out of control, so we need to do some cleaning there. And then the most important thing, provide feedback. So we know what is good and what is not good, and also positive feedback is more than encouraged. So we're living in this super agile and a super active world nowadays, and people tend to always provide negative feedback for open source assets and open source projects. When something isn't working, you hear about those things, and it's completely fine to remind that these people who are actually spending their own time for the benefit of you for free, that they are actually doing something useful. So let's try to kind of embrace the culture of positivity as well. So not only the negative things, because then that balances out nicely on the community. Good. Now, quick recap on the resources: SharePoint DevDocs, AKMS SP DevDocs, videos, AKMS SP Dev videos, AKMS SP Dev issues is the issue list, and then open sources in the github.com/SharePoint and github.com/PnP. Like I said, we're centralizing a lot of the open source projects now on the PnP side, just to make sure, because they're not really specific to SharePoint or they're not specific to teams, and they're open source community-driven projects, they will be moved to the PnP organization. You can, by the way, also see around the naming changes. You can also see that in the SP Dev videos section. Our YouTube channel has been pretty recently renamed as the Microsoft 365 and SharePoint Community YouTube channel, where we have plenty of the community videos as well. Good. Quick update on the SharePoint framework first, and then we move into the open source project, other open source project, and then the demos of today, starting from Markus. So quick update. This is actually a recap reminder from the last time. For us, the personal applications with SharePoint framework is a massive deal, and we really, really want people to actually consider this as an option to implement extensibility in Teams as a personal apps or as a web as a tab in Microsoft Teams channels, and because it is so easy to do. And we do have a nice tutorials available on this one. There is a specific video pretty recently added on the YouTube channel, which is really around the fact that, okay, how would I create or take an existing web part and SharePoint framework web part and expose that as a personal application? Technically, it's nothing more than one attribute in the manifest. So it's pretty cool that it's so simple that you can just target your extensibility in Teams or in SharePoint or in future in Office add-ins as well. And also in this case, you can actually see that you can easily pin the left navigation, the application in the left navigation of Microsoft Teams, and you can actually force that to be there for your employees of your company as well using the application policies. So it's a pretty cool setup, which is available with Microsoft Teams. And thank you, by the way, David, on the link around that one. Now, the second thing what I actually shared in social media like 1 hour ago is that we did pretty recently do a refresh on all of our main getting started tutorials. And this includes all of the basic SharePoint framework tutorials, like set up your Office 365 tenant, including how to get one tenant for free, which will renew automatically, how to set up your development environment, getting started, and extensions and all of that. So all of these tutorials have been refreshed either in, well, actually latest in early February, but we never actually told that they're being refreshed. So just making sure that everybody is up to date, that they are updated. The videos have been updated, and they're all using SharePoint Framework 1.10, which is the latest version available. So making sure that if you follow up on the step on the video or in the written format, you will achieve the end result, which is basically learning how to create these things in practice. And if something is missing, by the way, on these tutorials, please do let us know. We're highly interested in knowing what do you need to be able to successful in your work, because we want to help you on that journey. So if every now and then we hear about, well, why doesn't Microsoft actually understand that I need X and Y and Z? Tell us what you need, and we can help you. That's really the key in all of this discussion. And that's why this call actually exists. And we are tracking what's happening in the chat window. And if you have any requests, please let us know. That's super important. Now, on the roadmap side of the house, what's happening after the 1.10 release? 1.10 release was already like a month ago already. We haven't yet scheduled the 1.11 release. It will come this spring. We are kind of aligning our work. There's active work being done on the store front. So we're looking into the store policies and what does it actually mean that SharePoint Framework is going to be supported in SharePoint in the store, in the app source. We're also looking into having that unified toolchain in Microsoft 365. So what does it mean to create an application which is using a fluid framework behind of the scenes, and then the application can select where it's being surfaced. It's being surfaced in Teams or in SharePoint or in Office add-ins or as an Office add-in. So basically, really, I'm investing on that end-to-end unified toolchain scenario, and native support for Fluid Framework, which is pretty cool. Obviously, Fluid Framework has to be released before we can actually do that. Fluid Framework is currently in preview, by the way. It is a pretty cool setup. Faster inner loop means that we are targeting monthly releases. I can't promise when that happens, and then more extensions means that we need to add you more capabilities in the SharePoint portals to support your widgets to be added on the left navigation, top navigation, the header, footer, content footer, and all of that. And we absolutely understand that that's a priority, but we're looking into when we can actually invest on that. But at the same time, we're also investing heavily on the general, let's say, improvements in the SharePoint Online, like the performance improvements and reducing the page load times and all of that, which is a high priority thing as well. So making sure that everybody is happy around those things. Now, PMPJs, client-side libraries, quick update on this one. The latest version, 2.03, which is a small patch version on 2.0 version, that was released on the 14th of Feb. It's kind of a Valentine's Day gift. And that was basically the last thing what Patrick really wanted to do before he went now on a family leave. So he's potentially getting an additional family member, and he can tell what happens and where happens when he's back. But he's now right now on the family leave. He is slow on the responses in GitHub because then he's obviously prioritizing the time with family. There's also a few videos. There's a new video series related on PMPJS v2 usage, so introduction to PMPJS v2 by David Warner, and deep dive on selective import. So with v2, you can selectively import what's relevant for you into PMPJS rather than always bundle in the whole package. And that's a really, really cool feature. And David is walking through that in the videos in the background. Now, like I said, Patrick is now on the family leave. It doesn't mean that if nothing is happening, if there's any critical things, we'll obviously work on those things. But technically, the 2.0, we are not aware of any critical things. We're not aware of any massive gaps. It seems to be working really well. There's no further issues, known issues, which we need to jump into. Keep on pushing pull requests and issues. If there's any, there might be small delays on processing them. Now, moving on things, Office 365 CLI, new preview version of 2.7 with commands for command completion in PowerShell, so better integration with PowerShell, adding Teams tabs using the CLI, retrieving Azure AD app role assignments, so understanding what are those settings in Azure AD, reporting Office 365 group and tenant usage, listing deleted site collections, and removing SharePoint organization asset libraries. There is already a capability of creating them. Now this additional command will then support also removing them. Also, what's really cool, what has been being built by Waldek and many others, is the SPFx Doctor command, which is basically verifying that your setup is ready to go for your target environment. So this is basically going to address one of the classic requests, what we're getting from you, which is, hey, I'm building stuff for SharePoint 2016, or I'm building stuff for SharePoint 2019. What should I actually install? Is my environment ready to go? Is it now fine, or should I do something else? And SPFx Doctor command is basically targeted for that one. So that should be super useful. And reducing then the questions on, hey, my environment isn't working, what's wrong? You'll run the command, it will tell you what's wrong. That's really the objective of that one. So really cool stuff. Now, on the reusable components and control side, not much here happening. So Ilya, who's the lead here, has been quite busy on the conference side right now, but he is actively looking into the pull requests. And there's a beta version 1.17 version available on the React controls, where we're apparently getting much more submissions as well. So these are SPFx controls and React controls, which are using Office UI Fabric React, but they are context aware. So as an example, if you use a list picker, you don't actually need to define where the lists are coming from. You can just with the properties say that I want to have lists from the site which are not hidden, and then all of the HTTP calls behind of the scenes are automatically done. So it's kind of a wrapper and an abstraction layer on top of the Office UI Fabric React, making your life easier. And definitely we recommend you to have a look on that. On the React property control side, this has not actually had that much development recently, but it's not that we wouldn't be interested. It's actually because it seems to be quite feature complete, so to say. And there's always room for improvements, but we haven't seen that many new submissions and asks related on new features on the property pane and property control side. So if there's anything, please do let us know on the issue list so we understand what should be added as a functionality, because that's, again, super important. We want to do stuff for you and benefit your objectives rather than building something for the sake of building something. That's not a smart thing to do. And then the final piece before we go to the Markus Möller's demo, PnP SPFx Generator, just a quick updates on that one. 1.12 is out around that one, and that has a native support now for Aurelia IO. So you're able to basically target your SharePoint framework solutions not to be created using React or Angular or Vue, rather just targeted them using Aurelia. So if you prefer Aurelia as the chosen JavaScript framework, which you want to build, we in SharePoint Framework, obviously, and in SharePoint Online, we support any framework. So you can use the PnP SPFx Generator then to give you the scaffold starting point of building those web parts using the Aurelia style. And that's pretty cool as well. Now, there is a work ongoing here related on Angular 9. So if you are interested on helping here, Angular 9 is out. I think it's out. And Stefan Bauer is looking into any assistance there to making sure that we can actually incorporate Angular 9 support in this open source generator as well, because that will be definitely beneficial for those partners and customers who've chosen Angular as their chosen framework for the development. Now, there's a question from Ralph related on a Placer considered as a framework. Yes, we've been having, actually, we have had a discussion with Hanselman in the ESPC, so in Prague pretty recently, that was actually in December, that we should start doing a proof of concept related on Placer. Right now, the Placer bundle sizes are pretty big, and it has a slightly different perspective than actually having individual, let's say, web parts or web widgets in the UI loaded separately. But again, we're looking into that. We're highly interested in seeing how we can actually make that thing happen and making some things, well, first of all, start with a proof of concept and then move forward from there. But let's see how that goes. And if somebody actually has a proof of concept on that one, we're highly interested in hearing your, let's say, testing and input around that one as well. But now let's actually go to the demo section. And if I'm guessing our situation right, Markus, you're on the call.
I am, yes. So, yeah, welcome from my side. What I want to show you today is the new capability how to create an Outlook add-in with Outlook Web Access with SharePoint Framework. And I'm heavily using as well Microsoft Graph here for my demo case. But first, for those of you who might not know me, my name is Markus Möller. I work for Avanade in Germany. You can find me on Twitter as well as on my blog post. I do not present the first time here, but the second only. And luckily, we found the slot today because I'm also having a family leave in 2 weeks or so, but see you something in my demo on that as well. So about the story, what I'm going to show, would like to introduce you is what we like to, against the intro, is to store complete mails to OneDrive and or Microsoft Teams. What we have to do for this story is to first get the Outlook context from the current mail. Then we have to browse our targets, OneDrive, groups, or Teams folders to find a position where to store it. And then we have to grab the full mail as a MIME stream with Microsoft Graph, and finally store it. And in storing, you have two options with Microsoft Graph. The first one is for small files, smaller in 4 megabyte. This is a quite simple story, and for big files greater than 4 megabyte, you have to do it a bit more complex. What I will show you in the demo exactly in terms of code as well are the first thing, the third, and the fourth thing. Browsing targets is a bit complex to show, to demonstrate, and this is why I will skip this. And there are also other great stories out there that you can use. So when we go to Visual Studio Code for a while to show the solution for an Outlook add-in, we first need two things. We need a manifest file. This is in the Office add-in folder. And here, for instance, we can give the display name or a description of our add-in. The second thing and the first part of the demonstration is in a web part. We first need to retrieve the context, and this is shown here. So we retrieve the context and the mail and the item ID and the subject. And finally, in the controller, we have some methods to save our mails. First, we retrieve a mail, and this is the API for that with Graph. So get the message, get the mail ID which we retrieved, and the value. And once we retrieve that, we can check the size and either save it in a normal way or in a big way. The normal way is quite easy. Simply store it away. And the big mail, we have to open up an upload stream first, and then we will upload the mail in slices until we have no portions left. How does this look like in action? We first have a small mail here, a demo, mail from my daughter, expected to be born in 2 weeks around. She just wants to introduce herself right now. In the context of this mail, we have our, I called it in this way, copy to SharePoint Outlook add-in, which we can open up. And once this is running, we first hit here our context, we have our mail, and we see that this mail has an item ID and a subject. The subject we will only use later for the file name of the storage. Now we have our OneDrive, our Teams, and our groups entry points. For instance, we can start to browse in OneDrive here. Takes a while, but here we have our folder structure, and we can move now through our folder structure. Quite the same like out-of-the-box capability from SharePoint, for instance. And then, for instance, we can move to a subfolder. And we can save it here. And now we have a small mail. You see this is only a text mail. And here on the response length, you can clearly see this is a really small mail. So we will only jump in our normal mail file, normal save method. And there we can only save it away. This doesn't take long. We will return a success message here. That's all we did so far. And that's done. Now, the same, but how does it look like when we have a much bigger mail? This mail is around 12 megabyte in size because this is a high resolution photo. And what we can do here is the same. Have again our mail item and our subject. Now let's go to Teams, for instance. Here we see lots of Teams. Can pick one. Can browse through the documents library. Again, we have some folders here. And save it again. This takes some time now, you can see, because now what he's doing is he's retrieving the mail from Graph, so this 12 megabyte in size at the MIME stream. And there we are. And here we see the response length is much, much bigger than our size. And when we jump in, we are going to our big mail savings. Once we move forward, we can see again here that we are here in our upload mails. We already created an upstream above. This is quite simple. You can see from the code. But when you later check the code or my blog post on this, but here what I want to show is the upload mail slices. So we are separating this in portions of 320 kilobytes multiplied with 5, but you always have to use 320 kilobytes in size. So what he does now, after every slice, he checks if the response contains an ID. And this is currently undefined. And this takes several times now, but not that much. And there we are done now. This is how the savings of big files in Microsoft Graph work. And now let's quickly jump to the results again here in my OneDrive under attachments, folder 1, subfolder 1. And here it was our mail. And once we open this, a normal mail is can be opened fully in preview mode even. But when we go to our Teams and check the big one in team number 14, within the files, it was folder 1, I think. and I think it was subfolder 1. There we have the big mail. This does not really have a preview because that's too big. Teams cannot handle that, but we can download it. And we can open that as well. And there it is. That's all from my demo side. Some things what I would like to do in the future on this new topic is what I showed you. It's the only way in terms of debugging what I currently found as a solution. So you can upload the app with build not as ship mode, but in a normal debug mode. And then you can load it from, I'm doing here, I can show you here that I'm having a gulp serve task running in the background, which is serving that. So this works, and then you can debug it inside your browser. But I would like to have a better capability here. And also as a hint, Vesa, you said this on the documentation. This is not quite documented at the moment. Here, I would like to find out a better way for that. I would like to experiment more with the Outlook manifest because, of course, you can also change the logo. You can try to arrange later groups with that actions also in a ribbon once this is available. And this is the final thing, once this is available for the Office applications as well. And then I would like to see new ones on this idea to store something, or also create totally new ideas to work with PowerPoint, Word, Excel as well. Finally, just for the recording also as well, here my resources. I have a blog series on that topic and also an SPFx sample. And that was from my side. Thank you.
Now, Markus, don't stop sharing. Don't stop sharing. People always want to run away. Can we go back on the solution? So let's have this opportunity because we have some extra time because Martin isn't here. Can you just pinpoint for those who are not aware where did we ask the permissions on the graphs? Just to recap that, and what kind of permissions are we using in this case?
That was in the config
file,
right?
Package solution, yeah.
Yeah, remember. Long time ago. Maybe I have to add this because maybe someone is thinking when he goes to my blog series, maybe I can insist this as well. I published this blog series, I think, only 4 days after this capability with SPFx and Outlook add-ins went live. But honestly, 80% of this code would also work in a web part. So I have to admit, I already wrote it in last summer and was just waiting for the publication of this capability and slightly adapt this. So this just as a hint, maybe you also have done this already, reused components from SharePoint web parts to Teams applications or so. You can do the same if you have the same idea, same working functionality from web parts to Outlook add-ins and forth and back. So long time ago that I came across this, but indeed you need quite a lot here, and this depends on my solution. So you need group read all because I am retrieving all the groups a user could have. If you don't need that, you can skip it, but I think it's the same for Teams. You need user read, you need files read, and files read write, of course, and you need mail read because you need to retrieve the mail. Yeah. And finally, the sites read write all. I think this is not necessary because I think I dropped out for a while the capability to store to SharePoint sites as well, but this could work the same way. Yeah.
Good. And then also maybe the one thing to point out, so the Office add-in folder, and just to pinpoint that one, that you need to run the 1.10 SPFx in the preview mode, so plus beta mode, to be able to get that by default generated. What's interesting in there, actually, just to pinpoint how we implemented this, at least in a beta. So if you open up the manifest, if you scroll down on the URL, which is something like Office add-in all the way to the ASPX page. There we go, that Outlook hosted app.aspx. So just to recap again, so the beauty of this model is that you do not have to host anything. You do not have to actually even go to -AD and grant the permissions. Well, technically you have to grant the permissions, but you're using SharePoint UI. But no hosting, no deployment, no optimization. The CDN, everything else, and this is all and the hosting is automatic because we're using SharePoint as the platform. You don't have to use the SharePoint context, but you could use SharePoint just as the hosting platform and then do operations in the Outlook Web Access site or in the Teams site. So you don't necessarily need to even access the SharePoint, but we're just using SharePoint as an underlying, let's say, framework to automatically host our stuff, which is always the most difficult, well, one of the most difficult things, because in a normal enterprise scenario, I know Markus knows this really well as an Avanade person, you cannot just go to a customer and say, yeah, I want to have one application in the Azure AD and give me those permissions. That's taking ages to happen. Doing the automatic hosting in SharePoint, that's super, super easy and sweet. But anything else? Yeah.
No, I think you mentioned all what I also partially wanted to mention, but you mentioned a lot more, and that was really interesting. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Markus. I think we're ready to then jump to Nanddeep. If you are on the call, I think we can jump on your screen directly from here.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. Take it away.
Thank you. So hello all, good morning or good evening. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity to have me here to present my SPFx sample to manage Office 365 groups with SharePoint framework. Myself, Nanddeep Nachan, and I'm from Pune, India, and I have been working with SharePoint, Office 365, and Azure for many years. And I have developed this sample along with my sister, Smita Nachan, who is also working on SharePoint for many years now. Thank you for this opportunity so that we siblings got a chance to work on one sample. So here are some social handles to get connected with us. So the sample I'm going to demonstrate today is about managing your Office 365 groups with SharePoint framework. The sample is available in the PnP Git repository at this particular location, along with all of the documentation, prerequisites, and instructions on how to start using this sample. So this particular sample is developed using React.js and with SPFx drop version 1.9.1, which was the latest available at the time of development of this sample. Why do we have this sample, and what are the driving factors for it? So everyone is aware that Office 365 groups is the foundational membership service that drives all teamwork across Microsoft 365. So once we are part of Office 365 group, then we can get the benefits of group connected services like shared Outlook, shared calendar, SharePoint site, Power BI, Yammer, Planner, and Teams. During this demo, I'm going to use two users. One is a global administrator, which is here. And the other user, which I'm going to use, is just the SharePoint administrator. So for example, if you want to see all of the groups which are available in our tenant, we can anytime come to these groups and see all those groups. That's great, but is there any way to see all of the Office 365 groups in a tenant for other users? So the answer is yes, but partially. So for example, on this particular user, if I go to Outlook and click people here, so I will be able to see all of the groups where I'm a member or I'm an owner. But still, there might be some other groups exist in my organization which I do not manage, or they are private groups, so which I might be interested to join. So then how can we locate all those groups and how can we join them? So this particular SPFx solution goes beyond that limitation and provides the functionality using Microsoft Graph APIs. So most of the key features with these samples is like we can list all public as well as private groups with some basic information like name, description, logo, and the privacy, of course, public or private. And then we can search for the groups. If you have multiple groups being created in your organization, you can quickly search and go to the group. And then we can join or leave the group from our SPFx web part, as well as we can join a private group with the approval of group administrator, and this is developed using Power Automate flow. And then even we can manage the groups for administrators, and then we can browse the Microsoft team associated with that particular group. And then lastly, we can set up a new group. So there are few functionalities and some user roles associated with this sample. So for example, if you are in a public group and you own a owner role, in that case, you can manage the group. If the group visibility is public and you are a member, then the option for you will be to leave the group. If you are not part of that group, then you will be able to join the group. For example, if the group visibility is private and you are the owner of that group, again, you will be able to manage that group. If you are a member, then you will be able to leave the group. And if the group visibility is private and you are not part of that group, then you will be able to request to join that particular group. So we will see that in a demo. So for this purpose, I have my SharePoint page set up here, which is hosting my web part. So before I go into the demo, I will probably edit this particular web part and go to the property pane of this particular web part. So here we have this flow URL, which is responsible for having the flow being triggered for joining the private groups. So I will discard this change. Okay. So let's go through the one by one functionalities. So here is a web part which lists out all of the groups. So at least as of now, I have around 25 to 30 groups created. So it is listing all those with a scrollable panel. And then from here, we can filter the groups based on name. So for example, I can type the name or type the characters, and it will start to filter out the groups based on the name of that particular group. The second functionality is, for example, if you are part of that particular group, you are admin of that public group, then here we have option to manage the group. So once you click manage group, it will take you to the Office 365 site from where you will be able to see all of the groups, and then you can search the group from here and you can manage the settings. So for example, you can select the group and you can check the members and other things. So there is no direct API available by which we can directly go to that particular group setting, but at least from here it will make you redirect to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, where we have listing of all of the groups. We can locate our group and start managing it. The third thing is we can join the public group. So for example, right now we have so we have this group called as Rock and Roll, which is a public group, but right now I'm not part of that particular group. So I can just click this particular icon and it will help me to join that particular group. Once I am joined to this particular group, again I can click this icon and I can leave this particular group. So this is very much easy for public groups. But now that maybe a complex thing like how can we join a private group? So right now for this particular example, I have one group here called as Fabulous 5, to which this particular user, this admin user is admin. He can manage this group. On the other hand, I also have another user here, which is just the SharePoint admin, but he don't have access to this particular group called as Fabulous 5. So here the option is we can request to join this particular group. So I will click on this particular icon. It says that request has been sent to the group owners. So I will again come back to my admin account and I will go to Outlook. So if the trigger or the flow goes well, I should be able to see one email. Okay, so here it is. Request to join the private group. So here the automated email will come, which will say that this particular user want to join your group. And in that case, you can take two actions, approve or reject. So probably I will approve this. I will say approved and submit. So again, the flow will trigger, which will detect that this particular request has been approved, and then the user will be able to part of that particular group. So again, to this particular user, I will go to the Outlook, and here we can see the email has triggered that you have been added to this particular group and your request is approved. So now if I can refresh this particular window, in that case, again, if I scroll back to Fabulous 5, now I can see that I have joined this particular private group. And from here, again, I can leave the group if needed. Again, one more thing is if you are a member or administrator of that particular group, here is a link by which you will be able to navigate to your SharePoint site and manage the things from there. So yeah, okay. One more thing which I forgot to mention was about creating the new group. So down under here, we have an option to create a new group. Once we click this, we again have another React component which will handle the creation of new group. So maybe here I will call PnP demo. I will have some small description here, and then I will keep the visibility as public. In the owner, I will maybe type the admin. And again, in the member, I will type the same user, which is the one by which we are creating this particular group. So once I click submit, the group will get created. Probably I will come back to this particular user to show you that the group has been created. Okay. Now if I try to search for that particular group, the group is here. Okay. So this way we can do the multiple functionalities with the groups which are available to us. So probably now I will move to the code. So during this code walkthrough, we have this SPFx solution, and we have the Power Automate Flow templates here, which probably you can use in your tenant as one of the template to get started. And again, we have models here to represent the groups or the team channels. I just come to know that I forgot to mention one functionality. So for example, if your group is connected to the team, in that case, you will be able to see the team's icon in front of it. Once you click that icon, you will be taken to that particular team. So again, there is an option whether you want to open that in a Microsoft team or use the web app. So from here, we will be able to navigate to our team. So, okay, going back to the code, we have services here, which are kind of an extensible services to help us with create the group, join the group, or as well as leave the group. So probably I can walk you through this code first. So we have first method called as get groups, and we have the REST API or the Graph API here to get all of the groups. And by this way, we are able to get all of the groups even though you are not part of that particular group. So this will return us all of the group inside your tenant. And again, for that, we have some permissions here. We have this permission as application permissions, using which we are able to get all of those groups. And then there is one more method called as get my member groups, which is again using the Graph API to get the groups where this particular user is a member of. Then thirdly, we have a method called as get my owner groups. So as like getting the member groups, we don't have direct API or Graph API available to get all the groups where I am the owner. But as an alternative, we can use this particular REST API /me/owned object, and then we can filter onto the only group. So we can use this particular Graph API to get the groups where this particular user is a owner. And then we have one more method to add a member to the groups. So whenever someone requests to join the group, we are calling this particular REST API, the post method, to add that particular user to the group. And then we have remove member. In that case, we are again using the REST API to get a reference of that user using the user ID, and then we are removing that particular user. Then lastly, we have a request to join private group, which is dependent onto the Microsoft Flow or Power Automate. So here we are composing the body in which we are passing the group ID, name, URL, name of the requester, and email of the requester who wants to join your private group. And once it is here, we are again calling the Graph, not Graph API. We are calling that particular Microsoft Flow so that we can trigger that Microsoft Flow from the Flow URL, which is in the properties of our web part. And this flow will take care of joining the group on behalf of that particular user. And then we have a few supporting methods like get the group link, which is being used here to show the link to the particular group. And then we have get group thumbnail, which will just show the thumbnail of your group if you have set. And lastly, we have a method to create the group, which is responsible to create a new group inside Office 365. So based on the values which have been provided into the form, we can again post the Graph API to get this group created. Okay, so yeah, again to get the teams, we have this particular get teams channel, so that once you click onto the teams icon, it will take you to the first channel inside your team. Okay, so that was about the extensible service, and onto the React component. Mainly we have three components: group list, news group, and Office 365 groups manager. So this is the entry point to our web part, and then we have a group listing here, and then we have a button to create a new group. And when we are loading this particular component, we are making a call to get groups, which is getting all of the groups where I'm a owner, where I'm a member, as well as all of the groups available inside Office 365 tenant. And then we are passing all that information to our other React component, which is group list. So this group list can then use this information to render the particular information for that particular group. So for example, here we have we are using this list, and mostly we are handling all of the UI component using this on render cell. So if I directly move to on render cell, here we are showing all of the information based on the visibility of that particular group, if it is connected to the teams, based on the visibility as well as icon. If the user role is a member, in that case we are showing the icon to leave the group. If the group visibility is public and we don't have any user role, in that case we are asking the user to join the group. And the same way, if the user or the group visibility is private, in that case we are asking the user to request to join that particular group. So at least this is the main method wherein we are handling the visibility of all the elements by which we will be able to show the information about the group, and we can ask whether to leave or join that particular group. And then lastly we have new group, which is very much simple. We just have a few controls here to get the information about the group to be created, and then we are calling the method from the extensible service to get that group created. One thing I want to mention here is about the flow that has been created here. So for that, probably I will move to the flow. So if I go to the Power Automate flow, and if I go to my flows, this is the flow which is responsible to join the or allow the user to join the private group. So here, whenever the HTTP request is being received from an SPFx web part to join the group, we are composing that particular request, and then again we are getting the application ID, directory ID, and secret from the app registration which we created inside Azure. So probably even I can show you that very quickly. So if I go to show all and then to the Azure Active Directory. So in the Azure Active Directory, we have this app registration. So inside this app registration, we have registered this app, and to this app, we have given the API permissions so that it can read the group information, as well as it will help to add the user to the group. And again, we have certificates and secrets. So from here we can create a new secret for 1 year, 2 year, or never expire. And this particular values for the application ID, directory ID, and secret, we are adding to these variables which we will use later. And once we are here, then we are posting the graph API so that we can get the owners for that particular group. And once we get the JSON from it, we pass that particular JSON to retrieve all of the emails for those particular users. And once we get all the emails, we send the approval request to those admins so that the user will be able to join this particular group. And based on the outcome of that particular email, whether it is approved or rejected, if it is approved, then we are adding that particular member to the group. If it is rejected, we are simply sending out an email saying that your request has been declined. So this is how this solution is developed. And then I have a few references here, which probably you can use or just refer on how this component has been developed. Okay, so with that, thank you for having the opportunity to demo this web part. Okay.
Really great stuff, Nanddeep. One thing what maybe I missed it, but the controls, you're using the PnP SPFx controls for the people picker and all of that? Wasn't it
yes.
so? Yeah.
Yes, I'm using same thing.
Because so I saw this one and that just pinpointing for those who are not super familiar. So this is the only thing what you need to do. You don't have to worry about where the people are coming from and do the queries and anything. That's it. You just define the properties and things work. And I think that's a brilliant example of the controls. So
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Let me actually share my screen, and we are heading to hours. So clearly the two demos was actually quite optimal. It gave everybody enough time to, both Markus and Nanddeep, to enough time to actually talk about things properly. So we've been kind of having a debate always that should we have 2 or 3 demos in this course, and every now and then there's a super fast demo and then there's plenty of time, but maybe we should reduce the number in 2 so we don't need to rush, and then there's time for Q&A. Feedback, by the way, welcome on that one. So really cool stuff. Markus, really cool stuff on the Outlook integration and OneDrive and everything, and also really cool stuff from Nanddeep and your sister as well. A really great solution. I think Ralph mentioned on the chat window that this is almost like something which should be natively out of the box as a web part, because it's so clean and so cool implementation. So really cool. The only kind of how would I put it? The only kind of a small kind of a thinking point and maybe potential concern, actually, I think in both solutions was the level of the permissions they require for the SPFx solution, which might be a concern when you're having a debate with the security officers of the customers, and they need to understand what is the permissions, and when they grant the permission, who has access on things, and how does it actually work. Obviously, even though the solution has higher permissions, it doesn't mean that if the end user doesn't have the permissions, end user permission would be elevated. No, that's not what it actually means. So, but there's multiple scenarios always to think about. But really cool stuff from both. Just to recap, we're not going to have a Q&A. We're running out of time always. The next SharePoint Framework JavaScript meeting is on March 12th, 2020, and a week from now we'll have the non-SPFx call where we talk about provisioning, see some modernization and those stuff. And Chris Kent is typically there to talk about column formatting and all of that. But that's in a week, and then again in 2 weeks, the next SharePoint Framework call. If you're interested in doing a demo, please reach out and we can schedule you a spot in one of the upcoming calls. AKMS PnP for now is the address to remember. We'll see how we are adjusting them. But thank you everybody for joining. The recording of the call will be available in the YouTube channel within 24 hours. And by the way, based on Mike's input, we're not going to clear up the chat and show everybody a purge the chat immediately after the call, but within a week or let's say 1 or 2 days before the next call. So if you're watching the video recording, you can still go back on and find the chat and the chat discussion, because unfortunately in the recording, it doesn't actually have the chat. So if you're watching the recording and want to say, hey, what was that reference around the chat? You can still go back on the Teams and find the chat for, let's say, 2 days before the next call. And we need to do the cleaning, just again repeating that one, so that everybody can see the chat, so we don't hit the 250 attendee maximum on the chat, which is a problem for the recurrent meetings. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you everybody for joining. A recording will be in the YouTube in 24 hours. And thank you. Please keep the feedback coming and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.